This lecture is called Somatic Re-Education of the Body. And muscle tension is an unknown cause of illness. There's evidence by holistic bodywork pioneers that muscle tension is a cause of such problems like allergies, arthritis, asthma, chronic fatigue, migraine headaches, thyroid problems, lower back pain, disc, knee pain, hip problems, scoliosis, herpes, bronchitis, MS, weight problems, and diabetes, plus things like osteoporosis, heart disease, and many cancers. And one of the ways to understand this is that our muscle is about 2/3 of our body. So if the muscle is tight or tense, which is actually known as being spastic, that's what tension means, chronic spasms, then what happens, it's going to impact every organ in the body, every gland in the body. And when people go and get x-rays, they don't actually check the muscles. X-rays only check the bones and the joints. It doesn't check the condition of the muscles. And we're going to explain about this, how muscle spasm, which is tight muscles, is excess lactic acid trapped in a muscle. Lactic acid. And it develops abnormal sustained contraction, which is known as hypertonic spasm. And this, often we don't realize we have this because the body produces something called endorphins. So if you were really feeling the tightness in your body, and my experience, I've discovered this understanding in the last few years, but my experience I do acupressure for many, many years. For 40 years, I've been doing acupressure sessions of massage manipulations, that everybody's body was tight, and the sicker the person was, the more tight the body was. But nobody was feeling this, because if you felt these chronic contractions, you'd be in pain. But because of these body chemicals called endorphins, nobody feels the pain they're in constantly. But it's constantly breaking down the body, putting it into a state of stress. And this is basically exhausting the reserves of the body and putting into a stress response, which basically, a stress response, as I explained in some of my lectures and courses, first discovered by this man named Hans Selye, the stress response gradually shuts off the organ functions in the body. As you're using up energy, you gradually shut up organ functions, and the body degenerates. So this is the physical mechanism of this is muscle spasms, hypertonic muscle spasms. Everybody has them because of our modern society, our diets, our lifestyles. Even if you're eating natural foods, you have these too, especially as you get older. Because getting older is stressful to the body. So the body gets into more and more tension. So it's really important to correct these. And although, in my other classes and teachings, I believe that we have to correct these, you have to correct the cause of stress in many parts of our lives. So there's dietary stresses from a lot of natural eating. People create dietary stresses because we don't know how to eat naturally today. Even people who study natural foods don't know how to eat naturally. So we get into weird things like eating a lot of raw foods, which is very unnatural for human bodies. Or we get into things of eating super high protein diets or low carb diets or vegan diets, which are really unnatural for the body. And if someone wants to do that, they have to balance that in very specific ways. And so the body gets into stress. So, part of my teaching is to teach what I call a real macrobiotic diet. Macrobiotic means longevity, which is a diet which centers around grains and vegetables with also natural animal foods, natural fats, natural sugars, and understanding and learning how to balance that. In lifestyle, modern lifestyles are very stressful because human beings are not designed to sit a lot, and they're not designed to stand a lot. We're actually designed to keep moving most of the time. But the right amount of movement is healthy, and as we get older, we have to be careful about how we move, because if we push our bodies too much, it gets more and more weak and deficient, puts the body more in stress. So there's ways to compensate for modern lifestyles, environments. Doing the right kind of exercise can really reverse stress. We'll be talking about that more today. So we have to cut out the forms of stress, but we also have to, do this in a very specific way. Now, how to understand how these tensions affect the body. Everybody has these spasms, insidious. Even babies have muscle tension, but everyone has them. But because of the endorphins, we don't understand them, and it's actually the tightness of the body is affected by a part of your brain called the cerebellum. And the cerebellum controls tension in the body, but the cerebellum can forget that your body is tense, and then you have chronic tension. Now, the cerebellum maintains muscle tone. Like, for instance, when you're standing, you have to have a certain amount of muscle tone, or you're going to fall over. So it's the brain that tells your body to tense. Now, it's supposed to also, though, after a certain point, the brain is supposed to say, okay, now you don't need to tense, cut it off. But it gets stuck into overdrive, and then the body creates tense muscles. Now, how does this affect the body? Well, if you have a tight muscle, say, we have all these ideas about, say, like a condition like arthritis. Like arthritis, yes, it's created by all these deficiencies of nutrients or too much nutrition, too much stress on the body, too much stress on the joint. But the mechanism of arthritis is that you have chronic muscle spasm around the joint, and it's cutting off the circulation of blood and nerve energy to the joint. So after the circulation, say, on your fingers is cut off to the joint, you'll start to have swelling, inflammation, because it's irritating the joint to have no circulation there. So that's the mechanism of that. And if it's untreated, then basically what happens is your body sends calcium to stop the inflammation, but it also stops you from being able to move. So that's the mechanism of there. That happens in arthritis. Also, it irritates all the nerves in the body. So, for instance, like conditions like sinusitis is the circulation cut off to the sinuses, so it gets inflamed. So a lot of people have muscle tension in the face. In the past, when I've done acupressure on people's face, it creates so much relief because a lot of people have muscle tension they don't even realize they have in their face. And that causes inflammation in the sinuses. Also, back pain. Many people don't realize, but when you when you feel the back, it feels like a rock or a hard wooden table. And over time, what happens is that as we get older, the spasms get worse and worse and worse and tighter and tighter and tighter. And what happens is it cuts off the circulation to the spinal cord, and wherever the circulation is cut off the most, it starts to damage the cartilage, and it starts to damage the spinal cord. And then the solution is basically to have an operation, but if the muscle tension is created, the pain won't go away. And actually have family members who've had, haven't had back operations, and now they're still in pain. It didn't get rid of the pain because the pain is caused by the muscle tension, cutting off the circulation to that part of the back. So there's headaches. When you feel people's headaches, especially migraine headaches, their neck muscles feel like stone because it's so tight, there's no circulation. And then what happens when the circulation stops completely, you get pain there. Migraines are the worst, but even regular headaches. Tennis elbow, even if you don't play tennis, you can get tennis elbow. But tennis elbow is pain around there because all the circulation is cut off here because the muscles are spasming here. And a lot of that happens when people are doing things like on the computer with the mouse, a repetitious motion with their arms, and the muscles get tighter and tighter and tighter. Knee injuries, muscle tension around that. What happens with the knee injuries is the muscles become so tight, and then at one point you do a gentle motion and it really causes havoc on the joint because the joint can't move because the muscles are tight. This tension of the body accelerates the aging process because basically as you have automatic contraction, it reduces the circulation through the body. Many people are aware of the concept of the Meridians of Acupuncture. Well, years ago, these Meridians of Acupuncture were mistranslated as energy lines. It was mistranslated by, I think, a Frenchman who visited China, and he was very impressed by acupuncture. So he came up with this idea. He mistranslated the Chinese as energy lines, when the real translation had something to do with blood vessels. The meridians are vessels of blood and nerves. And so basically and they're connected they run on the surface of the body in the muscle fascia, and they're connected. They discovered this brilliant idea that thousands of years ago in China, that they're connected to your organs. And that if you stimulate them, or you move them by certain movements, you stimulate them with fingers or needles, or you do certain kinds of movements the Chinese developed exercise, you can release the tension in these, and then increases blood and nerve energy to the organs. So if you have tension going on throughout the body, you block the blood and nerve energy to the organs, and then the organs, what do you think? Do they have to work harder or easier? Of course, obviously they work harder. And then basically this accelerates the aging process because your organs become old before their time. So basically this is affecting the aging process too. Now, as I mentioned before, established medicine does not recognize what's called hypertonicity, that's muscle tension, as a malady. Doctors rarely consider muscles to be the culprit, or know how to treat a muscle other than surgery or pharmaceuticals or with strengthening exercises. And what do you think strengthening exercises do to the contraction of the muscle? Make it worse or better? Make it worse. So strengthening, in fact, the worst is actually when people they go to the gym and they get those really expanded muscles. In Chinese medicine, this is considered a sign of blood stagnation, a disease state to have muscles like that. And in fact, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and other bodybuilders, not only Arnold, but other bodybuilders who developed the chest muscles extensively, ended up having basically bypass surgery. I think Arnold had quadruple bypass surgery because of the circulation cut off to his heart muscle from the over-exercising. So that basically so established medicine doesn't see this, and basically they use things like muscle relaxants and Botox when they do find a muscle is tight. But this doesn't really work for those kind of conditions either. So muscle tension. Now, basically, chronic pain is often causes muscle tension. Shoulder and hip joint pain, elbow pain. Chronic fatigue, the main cause is muscle tension throughout the whole body. And the way I explain this is, imagine that if I somehow had one of your loved ones dangling out the window, and we were on the upper floor, we're on the first floor, it wouldn't be a problem here. But if we're on the 10th floor and you're dangling out the window, I said, if you don't tighten your fist and hold it without stopping, they're going to drop. So I give you a high incentive to do that. And so you're holding it, and at first you think, okay, this is nothing, right? This is nothing. And remember, we're going to drop. If I see it go down a little bit, they're going to drop. They're going to drop on the floor, on the ground there, 10 stories. So you keep doing it. About 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes into it, you're going to start to feel really tired. 10 minutes, you're going to actually feel in pain. 15 minutes, they're going to drop probably, because you're not going to be able to hold it anymore because it's just too much. That's your body. Most people's bodies are doing that all throughout the body. But because of endorphins, the natural painkillers, you don't feel the pain. And then when it gets really bad, you really feel the pain. And then people said, oh, I developed a back pain. No, you had a back pain for years. Now you feel it. So you didn't develop it. So basically, shallow breathing is a very big part of the tightness, and cardiovascular problems means that the circulation has been cut off to the heart. High blood pressure is majorly caused by tension in the chest, circulation cut off to the chest. There's evidence that hardening of the arteries is caused by years of chronic spasms in the chest area and in the back area too, behind there. Now, Thomas Hanna is one of the pioneers of the body, one of the most amazing visionaries of body understanding of the 20th century. And he wrote a series of books, 2 books he has out. The first book is called Somatics, Reawakening the Mind's Control of Behavior, the Emotions, the Body, or something like that. And it's an amazing book that where he explains the way that the body goes into stress and starts to have muscle spasm. It can happen anywhere, but it can happen in a very specific way. And the first way that it happens, after you've been stressed for a long, long time and the body can't handle it more, and starts yelling, "I'm not going to take it anymore." I don't know if you remember that movie, but with the man yelling out the window, "I can't take it anymore." But there's a famous movie for that. You just have to go back to the 80s and check it. And but very specific stress response where the body can't take it anymore, he called the red light reflex. And healthy stress is called the green light reflex. But the red light reflex, and then you have, but the red light reflex is where the body can't take it anymore. And this is a response that all animals have when something is stressful. It's called the startle response or the escape response. So the body pulls in like this. So, like for instance, if one of the wild dogs of Glenview or wild packs of dog ran in this room, we'd all, the wild dogs are here. I hope there are no wild dogs in Glenview. I haven't seen any yet. But if they did, we'd all go like this as a startle response. But the startle response can also happen very gradually over time when the body has been under too much stress. So it starts in the face, works its way down to the neck, arms, trunks, and legs, and it causes contraction of the various parts of the body and muscle tension, the spasm. So it's basically the crow's feet that people have. That's the red light reflex, the body is stressed. The wrinkled brow is when we're stressed. You get wrinkles in here when you're stressed. When it gets really bad, your head goes forward and you have what's called the Dowager Hump, where this neck starts to stick out back here. They actually have a name for it. It's called forward head syndrome. It is what it is, right? So even at a young age, because of people being on computers too long, young people, you actually see young people now have this forward head syndrome. But the forward head is happening because all these muscles in the front of the body, they call the flexor muscles, are tightening. That's what's happening under the stress. When the body can't handle stress too much, all these muscles start to pull down and go forward. The flat chest, the stooped trunk. So you see this in advanced aging. The lack of breath, the breathlessness comes when you're cutting off the circulation here because these muscles are all tight. And then aching knees when it goes down the body. Eventually it cuts off circulation down here. So for men, erectile dysfunction, lack of sexual interest for women, cutting off the circulation here. A lot of digestive issues, cutting off the circulation in the front here. And so basically, also it creates, what happens as the body gets tight and it affects your breathing, it also affects your emotions. Because the breath and the emotions, you may have noticed, some people don't notice this, but if you pay attention, whenever anybody's in a distressful emotional state, their breath changes. So when you're nervous, you kind of hold your breath, anxious. When you're angry, you start to breathe really strongly. When you're fearful, you can hold your breath also. So your breath changes out of its deep fashion. And when the body is tight, the mind is tight. Body and mind are one. So when the body is tight, the mind is tight. As your body gets more and more tense, the mind starts to get tense too. So it's interesting thing is that we often think there's a disconnect between the brain and the body. So people go to a psychiatrist and they say all their problems, and the psychiatrist gives them comfort and relief and explains things to me for reason. So the person says, "Oh, that's great. I feel much better now." Then they go out and in their car and they're stuck in traffic, and starting to get tighter and tighter, and they're sitting for an hour after they get from their session, and by the time they get home, whatever happened in the session is a fading memory, and now they're back into the body tension. And all the stagnation, stuck motions, everything they're feeling is there. So in America, in modern sense, we tend to disconnect everything. Everything is, some actually say this is the male-oriented thing, is to disconnect the body from the mind, mind only. So instead of the body only. But the body is actually superior because there's no disconnect. They're all one. If you change the mind, the body changes. You change the body, the mind changes. But if you do only one, if you change the body, you get a lot of mileage from that because the mind, will follow that. If you change the mind only, you don't get as much mileage. You still get mileage, but you don't get as much. So it's interesting because there are people who teach ideas which are absolutely true. In the East, they discover these too, is that we make up reality. We don't make up the chairs, you're not making up me, but you're making up what you think of me. You're making up what you think of the chairs. You're making up what you think of the circumstances. That's what you're making up. And being aware that you make it up and that we are feeling our thoughts gives a lot of power to people. But if the body doesn't change, it's very easy to go back to that default where you feel tense. And you don't feel like you're making everything up. And you feel that things are just the way I'm seeing them. And the world is just what I see. It's nothing else. Now, understanding that you make up the world can be helpful, and reminding yourself that you make up the world and that you're not stuck in your view of the world is really helpful. But if you don't change the body, it just seems to go back to the tight, tense state. And this is something that in China, in the Taoist tradition, they understood. So they understood that you have to harmonize the body and you have to harmonize the mind. It has to be a package deal. So your understanding of life is important, but you also have to put it together with diet, exercise, lifestyle, breathing as a package deal to harmonize. So the red light reflex, you have things like the face is projected forward, the muscles of the base of the neck around the seventh vertebrae are very tight because they're forward. Your muscles, basically, the shoulders are lifted and rounded, in that. And it's interesting when I teach exercise, like I teach Chinese healing exercises, Qigong, I'll have people do an exercise and say, lower your shoulders. Every time they raise their arms up, they raise their shoulders up. I said, well, try to lower them, and then they go back up, and then try to roll. Because what's happening is most people's shoulders are like that anyway. So it's hard, it takes effort to reprogram them. Now, this is also considered the sign of when people are worried, right? The shoulders go up when they're worried. And stoop posture, shallow breathing, the muscles contract in the abdomen and tighten there. So this is the contraction of and basically the cutting off the circulation of the hips also and into the legs. So varicose veins are caused by this red light reflex too, as the body goes down. Now, the green light reflex is considered, Hana, in his terminology, the green light reflex is considered healthy and normal because it's related to effort. So when the baby, if you've ever seen the baby walk around, if you've been around babies recently, they walk really funny. Their posture is like really strange, like walking like this, walking around. Because all the muscles in the back are trying to contract. I have a young grandson, who's almost 2 now. And so basically when he's walking around, you see him a few months ago, I was there, he doesn't live nearby. But I saw him a couple months ago, and you see him walking like, this really funny walk, like duck walk, walking, his whole body is moving, because his back muscles are really, he's working his back muscles. And eventually, as we go on, you don't see the exaggeration anymore, but the back muscles are always being used. They're called the extensor muscles. Now, what happened, whenever we make an effort, like in industrial society, we're always engaging the green light reflex of the back muscles because we always have things like worry anxiety, deadlines, schedules, time to be someplace, something's very important we have to do, we have to get to another place. So basically we have alarm clocks, we have coffee breaks, we have coffee to push us more, we have, everything is, we have to always do things in modern society. We have to go into traffic, and we get frustrated being in traffic because we're trying to get someplace on time. So it goes on and on. So compared to so-called primitive society, we always have to engage the green light reflex. Now, even though it's a natural quality of effortfulness, it's not a, but what happens, it gets stuck in overdrive. I thought it was really interesting several years ago when I found out how in hunter-gatherer societies before agriculture, how much they work every week to take care of everything they need to do. Any guesses?
70 hours?
70 hours. 20 hours. So they work 20 hours to take care of their food, all their needs, everything they have to do, 20 hours of work and effort. And so, most of us working 40 hours, work week, and then we, go home and we have to cook and we have to clean, and we have to take care of things, and if we have children, we have to take care of the children, and so, we're putting in really long hours, and they only did 20 hours a week. Because, the thing is that, because they, because they didn't really have to go out and buy things, they didn't have to, they made things, they had a house, not a house, but they had a kind of dwelling they had. The women would gather things like small animals and some food, and they'd dig for, kind of sweet potato-like foods. And the men would go out and hunt a few times a week. They wouldn't do it every day. They go out and hunt a few times a week. But most of the time they're just walking around looking for animals, so it wasn't really stressful either. So you could see, like industrial society, we actually have a different kind of stress. The kind of stress they had was when there was a natural disaster. So it's an interesting kind of stress because, like, you have a hurricane, you have a wild animal running after you, but how long did that last? It didn't really last for hours and hours. Maybe the hurricane. But how often did the hurricane happen? How often did the natural weather disaster happen? It wasn't everyday occurrence. But today, in industrial society, we have stresses that last a long, long time. But I thought it was very interesting. If you read about it, they actually studied most hunter-gatherer societies. It's shocking, but 20 hours. And, we're advanced, and now we work 40 hours. And that's another story. There's a lot of reasons for that. I don't know if you know about this, but about 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they predicted that human beings in America and most industrial societies would only be working 3 days a week, because we'd have so many machines and we'd have enough money that you wouldn't have to work 5 days a week or 40 hours anymore. But that's a whole another discussion because of economics and politics and things like that. We have to work a lot. So the green light reflex, is always going on, and the green light reflex is basically the excessive curve in the lower back. And in another lecture, I've talked about this that we did here. It's the excessive. It's called the hyperextended legs. Legs where instead of being bent when you're standing, they're bent almost backwards or straight. That's an unnatural posture. It actually is coming from the tightness in the lower back. And it's interesting because when my wife and I found out about this, at first we used to, when we were out someplace, she'd point out, look at that woman's legs, But it turned out that almost every young woman had hyperextended knees. If you look around, it's very, very common because there's always pushing. A lot of pressure on young women today, and a lot of men have it too, but women have it even more. So this hyperextension. Now this of course, this green light reflex, then it goes down to the body, head to toes. It's basically when you're putting out effort, your eyes open up. you basically, your jaw and face is pulling backwards, and basically your neck is pulling your shoulders down. So like when people are putting out effort, they have this kind of posture where the shoulders are down. The abdominal muscles lengthen, right? Because when the muscles back here tighten, this lengthens. And basically your diaphragm frees and basically the breath frees. So there's a lot of positive things about the green light reflex. But the problem is that when it goes all the way down the body, opening up the legs, opening up the feet, duck legs, when the legs are outwards, the feet are outward, that's considered coming from the green light reflex. So this has a lot of positive factors, but the problem is that when this gets stuck in overdrive, then the muscles start to become tight. And what happens is the muscles become tight in the back, and the muscles become tight in the front. So Hannah actually has a kind of interesting way that he explains these too. He calls that the dark vice. So a lot of elderly people, like as people get to be 70, 75, 80, they often have both the green light and the red light reflexes. So you'll see like the back muscles will be very tight, and then the chest will be pulling down. Sometimes they have more pulling down, sometimes they'll have more pulling back, but often you'll have both of them going on. And what happens is you're having contraction of all the muscles in the front, all the muscles in the back, and you're cutting off the circulation to all the organs. And then when that happens, it also cuts off the circulation to the legs. So then you have the elderly walking. And Hannah is interesting because the idea of the myth of aging, Hannah talks about, is that if we knew how to release these contractions, then we could stay functionally healthy our whole life. We don't have to feel, we'll be able to walk, we'll be able to move, we'll be able to have sex, we'll be able to breathe, we'll be able to have good energy our whole life if we know how to reverse them. But often what we do, that's one of the reasons why any moderate exercise will release some of the tension in the muscles and get it out. And the way to understand this is that you may notice, a lot of people notice that when you wake up in the morning, the body is stiffer. And the reason it's stiffer is because you haven't been moving as much all night. And as you don't move, the muscles contract even more. Even gentle, moderate movement, any kind of motion, will create more relaxation of the muscles and get it out of tension. So that's why basically the C-no posture is all the movements become stiff and limited. Like for instance, when the shoulders become stiff and you can't move the shoulders up and down, in China they call that the 50-year-old shoulder. And the reason being is that because as people get older, they just don't stretch and lift as much as they used to. So then so they have really simple exercises that you can do just to keep your shoulder motion moving. I'll explain about that and show you some too. So also, for walking, you have to have a rotation of the pelvis. The pelvis has to move back and forth. But if the muscles are tight here, you basically can't move in that way also. Chronic high blood pressure, strokes, ruptured aneurysms, arteriosclerosis. This is basically the body being in a tight, tense, excessively contracted muscle condition. Now, so I'm going to show you about some different movements that can release this, and we're going to practice some of them. But do you have any questions about what I talked about so far?
So what kind of exercises we can do to release this pain in the elbow or shoulder? Is massage helping with this, or massage?
Okay, so the question is, I'm going to show you and explain the different kinds of exercises that help. And massage, the interesting thing about massage has to be done very moderately to release tension in the body. If it's done hard and vigorously, it creates more muscle tension. Same with exercise. So the idea, that a lot of people have today is that you're supposed to exercise really hard and you're supposed to breathe hard to feel the benefit. But particularly, they had a really advanced understanding in ancient China as part of their internal martial art and part of their Qigong or healing, health promoting exercise systems. And their idea was that we should never breathe hard when we do exercise, ever breathe hard. And that doesn't mean you can't do vigorous exercise, but it means that you have to gradually build up to where the exercise, only to the level, you have to gradually build up to where the exercise is easy for you to do, even if some of it is vigorous, but you've gradually built up so you don't feel any discomfort doing it. That's opposite what we think today. We think we have to get ourselves to sweat and move. They even had a tradition, interesting tradition about exercise during the different weather. So for instance, they said, and this makes sense according to energy of the body, is that you should never do exercise to sweat in the winter. Because if you open up the pores and they don't close up, then basically toxins, like germs, viruses can get into your body easily. So in the summer, though, you should exercise to sweat because you want to open up the pores to release basically heat from the body. So they had that understanding too. So they had a different understanding, and particularly the kind of exercise they used to do is in the system of what's called the internal martial arts. Some of them are quite vigorous, but it was done in a certain way. They had a teaching about it that when you're very young, you could do real vigorous exercise because your body needs it to strengthen it. But after you get to be a certain age, after 30, then you have to moderate how much exercise you do. So that a lot of today's, even yoga today, the way it's being done, is done in a very hard fashion. And so if you stretch in a very hard fashion, what you do is you engage something called the stretch reflex. And the stretch reflex is that when you stretch too much, after you're done stretching, the muscles go like this. They tighten. So that yoga can be a decent practice if it's done very gently, very easily, not hard. And then also the exercise we're going to talk about, massage has to be done very moderately and gently to release the tension. There's actually a specific way to do this, but unfortunately a lot of people, like from the Japanese and Chinese tradition, they do real hard massage. And so people feel better with this massage, and now you understand why they feel better? Can you understand why they feel better after the hard massage? Endorphins. When you get a really hard massage or when you do real vigorous exercise, the body floods with these natural painkillers. But these natural painkillers also change your mood. Endorphins are also known as the natural heroin in the body. So when you produce a lot of them, you feel really good. And it makes you feel high. So that's what people feel after the vigorous massage or the vigorous exercise. And that becomes, of course, addictive. Example of this, there was a friend of mine who was a runner. And I was teaching at a health conference years ago. And I saw him from a distance jogging with a limp. So you know what that meant? He hurt himself when he was jogging, but he still had to go get his hit of endorphins from the jogging. So, and the interesting thing is that this was before. A few years later, he was diagnosed with osteoporosis at 50. A man diagnosed with osteoporosis at 50. So you know why he had that? Well, he did so much of the jogging. He used to jog like 30, 40 miles a week. He did so much jogging that the muscles became so tight, they put so much strain on the joint and bone that started to degenerate the bone and joint. So it was coming from his excessive jogging.
So Ironman is bad?
Ironman is not good for health. It's not good for overall health. You know that a lot of people don't realize this, but athletes die young. A lot of athletes die young because to perform at the high level of athletics, they have to really push their body beyond what is healthy. So the muscles become very tight and spasmed, and then if they continue doing exercise their whole life, it gets more spasmed. If they stop exercising, they still have the muscle spasm from those young age. It continues. But if they don't move at all, then you get even worse spasms because the muscles get tighter. That they get into it. What happens is by doing the excessive exercise, the body goes into a habit of spasm. So that there was a man who he was famous because he made this tape called "Dead Doctors Don't Lie," and he had a habit. He decided to collect obituaries of doctors and athletes. Because it turns out a lot of doctors die in their 50s. And a lot of world-class athletes die in their 50s too. And many people think that athletes are the healthiest because they can do all this amazing stuff with their body. So he wanted to prove to them, that's why he collected the obituaries, because he wanted to prove that athletes are not the healthiest because they die young. And then a lot of people think that doctors are the specialists in health. So you go to a doctor to learn about health. But he wanted to say that doctors are not the specialists in health because a lot of them die in their 50s. So if they were specialists in health, they wouldn't die in their 50s. So doctors basically, to understand the thing about doctors is that doctors are basically good for emergencies, and some testing can be helpful to get insights, but not so great for advice, unless there was like a life-saving advice, get you out of like danger from situation, because that's what medicine does. Medicine doesn't cure like heart disease, doesn't cure diabetes, doesn't cure most cancers, but they get people out of life-threatening circumstances immediately, but they don't have cures for that. You have to go someplace else for the cures. So with that said, then we can talk about different kinds of movements here. So Hanna, in his book, Somatics, Hanna has movements that are very powerful. In the future, I'll have some videos that will show you that you can get. But I highly recommend getting Hanna's first book, Somatics, Reawakening the Mind's Control, and Thomas Hanna, Hanna, to learn these movements. Now, I'm going to show you and practice with you some modified movements that we could do in a chair. Usually these movements are done on the floor, and they're done, what you do is you do all the movements, you go through I think there are 8 or 9 movements, and these are the most incredible movements to get your body out of stress. There are almost no exercises like this. The only thing that comes close to this, yoga is not like this at all. It doesn't touch these Hanna movements. Because these movements are not stretching your body, they're actually getting your brain, the cerebellum, to release the muscle tension. So they're very, very powerful. The only thing that comes close to them, and we're going to do a little bit of these, is exercises from the Qigong system of China. They come close to that, but yoga doesn't touch these, doesn't come close to these. And the interesting thing is that in my diagnosis in health and nutrition health coach training, I had a yoga teacher there who had been practicing yoga for more than 30 years, taught all over the world, had been to India many, many times. And I told her about the Hanna Somatics, and then she started practicing it and started to release this tension in her body. And then when she came back and told her experience about these exercises, she said, if yoga could have released these tensions, I would have done that, because I studied yoga extensively with the best teachers in the world, and it never released these tensions. So these are the exercises are very, very powerful. So we'll practice some of them together. The first one is a modified form of the exercise that Hanna does that is done on the floor. And what you do is you sit away from the back of your chair, or you could actually sit, you have to sit upright with your feet flat, but you can actually sit back on the chair, but make sure your whole back is touching the chair.
Are we doing them?
We're doing them now. So the first one is done. What you do with the first one is keep your head straight as if you're on the floor, but you push your belly forward so your lower back arches. Now if you want to feel it, you can put your hand on your lower back. Put your belly forward so you can feel the back arch. You feel that? Push your belly forward and you'll feel space there. Mm-hmm. Now push back against your hand so you can feel. So you inhale, push the belly forward and feel the back arch, and push back. Now when you do this, just one caution. Do this as little as possible. Don't do it as much as possible. Do it as little as you can to get as long. to little as you can, as long as you can feel the stretch. That's how you do these movements. They're done very super gently. So you inhale and just feel the back arch very gently, and exhale, push your back forward and feel the back lengthen against your hand. Inhale, exhale, push back. Very gentle again, super gentle. Inhale. Notice the body sensations on your back. Exhale as you do this. As you stretch, notice, see if you can feel the tension go up your spine. As you push back, see if you can feel the spine relax. Inhale, arch. Exhale, push back. See, just keep paying attention. Inhale, arch. Exhale, push back. Inhale, arch. Feel the tension in the back as you arch. Exhale, push back. Feel the tension release. Can you feel the release? Inhale, arch gently. Exhale, go back. Inhale, arch. Exhale, go back. Inhale, arch. Exhale, go back. Inhale, arch. Exhale, go back. We'll do one more. Inhale, arch. Exhale, back. Now, stop and just notice how your back feels. So the beauty of this to reset the brain is what you do is you tighten a muscle. In this case, this is for the back muscles, the green light reflex. So you tighten the muscle and then you lengthen the muscle. And when you tighten it, the lengthening of the muscle is the natural state of resetting the muscle. So that's what you're doing when you do this. The tension is bringing your awareness that your muscles are tight, and the release is now you know this is what it's supposed to feel like. It's supposed to be in that release state. So it takes a while to reprogram the body. Usually this is done on the floor with your knees bent. So that's the first one. Now, we'll do a modification of this, one more exercise for there. And this is done with your hand behind your head. So what you do is you put your elbow back, and notice how your back tightens when you put your elbow back. Can you feel that? When you go back, do you feel the tightness in your back? Yes? No? Shoulder you'll feel too. Yeah. Don't go back too much. Don't feel, just very gentle as possible. See if you can feel the tension in your back. Sometimes someone's back is so tight you can't feel it. So go back. Okay, now we're going to do, put your head back, keep your elbow kind of straight and turn your head a little. See if you can feel the muscles in the back. Can you feel them? Yes? No? A little bit? Go back, see the tension, and then go forward. Go back. See if you can feel it release. Go back. See if you can feel release. Now let's go back. We're going to put the elbow and gently, elbow and head back. See if you can feel the muscles in the back. Feel them in the back there? Yes? No? Yes. Okay. So that's the muscle tension that is normal, that most people have. And the more tense it feels, the more tight the muscle is. Okay, now you stop. Now you notice, you can actually notice sometimes it feels a little more relaxed just after doing that in your back. If you feel your back. Now we do the other side, of course. We don't want you to be crooked. We want you to walk home crooked. So now put the elbow back. Now you'll notice when you put the elbow back, you feel the other side of your back. Do you notice that? Mm-hmm. Now you feel the other side because there's a natural balance. So you go back, inhale, forward. Back, inhale, feel the back. Now just do the head. Just turn the head. Keep the elbow straight. Turn the head. Feel the muscles in the back. Feel that? 3 times. Now, you're going to inhale and go back with your head and your shoulder, just very gently, just enough to feel the back muscle. See if you can feel the back muscle there. Inhale, come back, and then relax. Now, some people are sensitive. They'll actually feel a relaxation in the back right away from doing that. Okay, now this next one we can do a few different ways, but a lot of people have tightness going all the way up and down the front, and if you have any like shoulders rounded or if you have any head going forward, that means these muscles are contracted in here. They're pulling. And when they're contracted, basically your lungs can't breathe. Now, the connection to the lungs is very interesting. The lungs, there is some evidence that the lung function is lower in every cancer. Any cancer, the lung function is lower. So that lower lung function can lead to cancer because cancer likes a low oxygen environment. So basically, and most cancers take 20 to 30 to 40 years to develop. So if you have any kind of shoulder tension or the head forward, you're setting yourself up for lower lung function. It also affects the brain, because the brain needs a certain amount of oxygen to function. And it also affects your moods. So basically, if you can improve this, it really helps. So to do this, we're going to put one hand, left hand, below the navel. The right hand on the lower part of the chest, just above the rib cage. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the arching, like we did before. So push your belly forward, arch. And then what we're going to do is inhale. And then when you exhale, you push your head down. Gently. Very gentle. Inhale, arch. Keep your head straight, but push forward with your belly. Feel the arch in the low back. Exhale, put your head down. Feel the muscles in the front contract. Inhale, arch. Muscles in the back contract. Exhale, forward. Inhale, arch. We'll do a couple more. Exhale, forward. Inhale, arch. Exhale, forward. Okay, now, so you could actually, what we're doing is we're tightening and lengthening these muscles in the front, and the muscle in the back and the front actually counterbalance each other. So when muscles in the back are tight, muscles in the front will relax. When muscles in the front are tight, the back relaxes. Ideally, both is good to relax. So now we put our hands behind our head. Keep the left hand under the belly. So what we're going to do is that arch the back again, push the belly forward, inhale, and exhale, come down. Inhale, arch the lower back. Exhale, come down. Inhale, arch the lower back. Exhale, come down. Inhale, arch the lower back. Exhale, come down. Inhale, arch. Exhale, down. Inhale, arch. Exhale, down. One more. Inhale, arch. Exhale, down. Okay, and then relax. So notice how your body feels. Notice now you can, when you close your eyes a second, you can start to feel like your muscles in the front, become more aware of them. And so eventually what happens is this and a series of other exercises. There's two, he calls these lessons, Hamasana calls these lessons. So the first two lessons are the first ones to start with to release the back and the front. And then the other lessons go down the body. It's kind of hard to do them in a chair. But I'm going to show you some things also. The other way of doing this that traditional in China they discovered is by doing exercises called Qigong. Originally these exercises were not called Qigong, they were called like internal exercises. Or they're called Dao Yin exercises or internal movements. And then about 50 years ago, someone started calling them Qigong. Qi means breath and something like energy, but it's not really energy. Qi is not really energy. Qi is something like the feeling of energy, or the something that is moving something. That's what Qi means. You may have seen some of the Chinese drawings of their language, and so the ideogram, they're called ideograms. The ideogram for Qi is a picture of a pot cooking rice and the steam coming off the pot. That's Qi. So it's kind of like the force of the momentum of something. So in Japan, they have all these expressions. They have them in China too. But when they say weather, they actually something like the Qi of the sky. In Japan, they call it the Qi of the sky. So it's like something like the quality of the sky, or whatever this quality of essence of the sky. That's called weather. So these exercises worked in a different way. They worked by kind of repatterning the body. So the movements, when you do these gentle movements over and over again, you start to repattern the body and release the tension in the fascia. So instead of like it does reset the brain, but it resets the brain by teaching the brain a new pattern for the body. So we'll do these standing, and I'll show you them standing. Okay, so there are here's a few things from, I teach these also. I'm going to have a video out on a really good forum called The 8 Brocades. It's going to be out and available for sale soon. We filmed it a few months ago. I'm going to be available. We're going to have it out in the very near future that you can get. And I highly recommend that set. People will do like one set like that for their whole life. Do it every day. Because as you go deeper and deeper, and it gets deeper effects, there's something that I've done before with sets, but it's called a 100-day practice. So there's a version of these 8 brocades that I'm doing a 100-day practice. And I find it's really interesting because as I do the 100-day practice, I find it goes deeper and deeper in the body. So I'm going to show you a couple of different things. So this is one. This is a movement that repatterns the shoulders and releases the shoulders. It's from a set of exercises which is related to internal martial art, which is done for health and healing, it's called Qigong. It's a basic training set. So what you do with this is what you're going to do is that you stand with your feet about waist or shoulder width apart, and you gently bend your knees. If you have a tendency to straighten your knees, hyperextend, consciously bend them. And what you do in this movement is we're going to move our hands up, like this, up the back, and then come down the front. So it's up the back, inhale, down the front. When you come up, you can straighten your legs a little bit and then bend them as you come down. Inhale, straighten, exhale, bend them. In, straighten, expand. In, straighten, expand. In, straighten, expand. One more time. In, straighten, expand. Usually do about 20 times. And then we'll go the other way. In, straighten your leg, bend the knees. Inhale, straighten. Exhale, bend. So you inhale, come up. Relax your fingers, a little gap between your fingers. You want to relax your fingers in, up. Exhale, bend. 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 And relax. Okay, so just close your eyes a minute. Now when you do that, when you're done with this movement, you inhale, put your hands up. Exhale, bring them down. And just close your eyes and notice any sensations in the body. Notice any tingling? No? And notice any parts that feel more relaxed after doing it, like the shoulders. So this releases the shoulders. Now, there's also, as part of Qigong, they do certain particular types of stretching that will help the body to release tension. So here's one very simple one to do. You put your hand in a very gentle fist, and then you lift up your arm. Try to keep it close to your head. Now, if it's too tight, you can't do that. And then go back. Go back. So let's do some breathing now. Inhale. Exhale. So this is good for 50-year-old children. In. X. In. X. Now let's go the other way. Inhale. Exhale. In. X. In. X. I want you to be crooked, so let's do the other side. Inhale. Up. Back. In. Be careful if you don't hit anybody behind you. Back. Now you may notice one side is tighter than the other. So eventually what you want to do is, whatever side is tighter, you want to do on the other side the same way. Now we go forward. Inhale up, forward. So back, forward, back, forward. Okay, and then relax. Just relax. Now you may notice that the shoulders start to feel a little different there as you do it, because it starts to release the tension. Now you can't, with one time you don't repattern it, but if you did that for months and months and months, you start to feel like your shoulders release tension. They stay out of tension after that. Now this exercise is kind of like kind of like this is taught as an essential exercise for most people to do just for health. And a lot of tension in the chest, like the shoulders are forward, the muscles are tight here. So put your hands like this, what you do with this, one hand over the other, and what you do, you have to open your legs a little wider. And what you do is you straighten your legs and open your hands. Make sure you have enough room there. And then basically bend your knees. Okay, now I'll do it again. So open. So I want to go out to the side, straight out to the side, and then bend. Out to the side, and then bend. Out to the side, inhale, exhale, bend. Out to the side, exhale, and bend. Okay, now what we do is we come up with our hands, inhale, and exhale. Okay, we'll do one more, and this exercise is for the hips. So it's done actually as a lot of martial art training. You push your hip forward, then you push it to the side, push it behind, but try to keep your head up. Push the other way, and push forward. So it's a circle. Push the side, back, the other side, forward. Side, back, other side, forward. You're making a circle, by the way. Let's go the other way now. Forward, the other side, back, around. Eventually, what you want to do is like a hula hoop. Get very comfortable like you're going around. If you find you have very stiff movements there, that exercise is really good for you. Okay, now to finish up, we just come up here, inhale, and exhale down. And then relax.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so those are movements from the Qigong tradition that can show you, and the other, I recommend highly Hana, and check out my video in a few, next few weeks we'll have the video up on our website you can get. It's going to be on my website for sale to get there. Okay, so thank you very much.